Your mind has a quiet, invisible delete button. Every time you push a memory into the hidden trash bin, the brain's mental firewall lights up and burns a tiny amount of stored energy, just enough to keep you sane, a few minutes of sweat, a sliver of sleep, or a drop of focus. In this video, we'll unearth that ghost file economy, how the brain's tug-of-war between remembering and forgetting drags the batteries in your head a bit lower, and what happens when the cost cuts into your daily life. If you've ever wondered why you feel drained after reliving a past trauma, stay tuned. We'll break down the invisible ledger that keeps your thoughts on the cheap. The invisible eraser, how your brain decides which emotions are too risky to let you feel. When the brain fires its delete button, a painful thought flashes for a split second and vanishes, like a candle blown out in a flash of wind. That instant erasure tells us not only that the memory exists, but that our nervous system deemed it too risky to keep in the light. Each time this happens, the brain's electrical circuits, the hidden trash bin, must work harder than if the memory stayed in the foreground. A single suppressed event can cost the hippocampus and amygdala a measurable amount of energy, a small fraction of the 20% slice of our daily calories that the brain consumes. In the quiet corridors of the prefrontal cortex, a mental firewall builds a wall around the emotional storm. The firewall insists that only feelings that can be managed safely reach the conscious scene. It uses neural gatekeepers that compare the incoming emotion to a battery of safety scripts. If the script flags the feeling as potentially threatening, say a sudden fear of public speaking after a humiliating mistake, the firewall blocks it and sends a scramble signal to the amygdala to suppress the flash. This deferred route keeps the main story flowing, but it also forces the brain to keep the block dynamic, watching the floodgates open or close with each new cue. The cost of this constant vigilance shows up in the body's energy budget. Suppressed memories keep the amygdala in a low-grade alarm state, and the prefrontal networks must fire repeatedly to maintain the wall, consuming additional glucose. Modern neuroimaging shows that people who frequently repress traumatic events display increased activity in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex during ordinary tasks, suggesting that their brains are multitasking, juggling everyday focus while guarding backup panic memories. The extra power drawn up to this point doesn't go unnoticed. Chronic repression can sap stamina, leave one feeling mentally heavy, and even dampen stress resilience. While the delete button can feel like a savior in the moment, it is not an instant cure. Acknowledging the ghost files that hang behind the silence can release the stored charge, allowing the brain to drip the energy back into other cognitive pools. Gentle practices such as mindful breathing, narrative therapy, or journaling help lower the prefrontal load, restoring the metabolic balance that the body craves. In the end, letting the memories out, even in small chapters, lights a small spare bulb, ensuring that the main lights stay bright enough to keep us moving forward. The ghost files, understanding that deleted memories aren't gone, they're just running in the background. When a traumatic event hits, the brain's response is like pressing the delete button on a stubborn file. Only the document disappears from the front pages, not the hard drive. Hidden beneath the surface, the memory lingers, tagging neurons with a silent warning that keeps the brain on high alert. The neural circuits that once fired at the notes of a comforting lullaby now whisper with a low, steady hum, estimating the cost of every potential trigger. This is the ghost file, a fossilized script the mind locks in the mental firewall, tying up neural bandwidth without transferring the file to the trash bin. Scientists measuring brain activity find that the suppressed memory area continues to use roughly 25% of the same metabolic energy it needed before suppression. In contrast, a full, recalled memory can demand up to 60% of regional blood flow during intense recall. The difference is subtle, yet chronic. When the brain keeps a memory in the background, it constantly monitors for the hidden keys. Each crucial cue glimmers, a scent, a tone, a posture, enough to wake the dormant script. The brain pays for this vigilance with a steady stream of stress hormones, like cortisol, which shiver through the bloodstream, adding hormonal noise that amplifies the cost. Consider a vivid example, a child who witnesses a car accident. The visual and emotional layers of the event are encoded heavily. Even after the incident passes, a single flash of red neon or a screech of tires can send a blast of activity through the amygdala. That rapid activation draws together a pocket of metabolic budget that the past self had to spare for survival. If suppression had completely erased the memory, the brain would save that budget for other processes, like learning a new skill or resting. Instead, the suppressed narrative argues for constant monitoring, and the brain compensates by tightening its own firewall. The practical implications spill over into everyday functioning. Sleep, a window for the brain to manage wasted energy, is often disrupted by the ghost files. Dreaming about unseen alerts becomes a nightly rogue wave in the neural ocean, draining recovery energy. In workplace settings, those buried memories can trigger once-in-a-while micro-episodes of irritability or hypervigilance, blowing up minutes of productive time into costly reset moments. Knowing that these ghost files are dancing in the background clarifies why certain environments feel unexpectedly hostile. When a quiet office turns tense because a former colleague shouted 10 years ago, the brain is paying its energy debt for being prepared, not because the memory is active, but because the cost of staying alert remains embedded in the circuitry. The energy leak. Why keeping things buried drains 40% of your daily focus and motivation. A single forgotten conversation can clog a neuron's pathways like rust in an engine. Each time a memory is buried deep beneath the surface, the brain still has to track and guard that ghost file, firing extra neural circuits to keep it quiet. That extra work consumes roughly 40% of the cognitive energy we would otherwise allocate to the tasks at hand. Think of the mind as an operating system whose most prized feature is rapid focus. When you keep a painful experience locked away, the system inserts a hidden trash bin that continuously refreshes its contents. The processor idles on a loop, tracing invisible threads that connect the stored memory to every other current thought. That idle loop is a silent crack in the mental firewall, leaking focus like a leaky faucet wastes water. Every day, the brain pays the same price, about 40% of the mental bandwidth that could be used for problem solving, creativity, or social interaction. Suppose you try to write a report at a coffee shop, but a decades-old argument with a sibling sits safely in your subconscious. The brain's delete button is pressed automatically, silently, and without a second thought. Yet the ghost file remains in the background, a half-waked alarm that pops up whenever a similar word appears. Before you even start typing, neurons fire, searching for that hidden reminder. The brain's attention shifts between your current task and the buried memory, pulling focus out of the present and into the hidden trash bin. Even a short 15-minute pause can feel like a 5-minute loss. You become aware of the drain in hindsight. Clinical studies back this mental leak by measuring pupil dilation and reaction time. Researchers record that participants whose anxious thoughts are held in repression exhibit slower cognitive flexibility. Their reaction time, measured in milliseconds, worsens by an average of 10% after repeated exposure to unrelated tasks. This measurable slowdown translates into the 40% of energy cost, a significant portion of daily motivation that never leaves the mind's backroom. Consider your own routine: shredding an email, deciding not to respond to a spam message, or dismissing a germ-phobic fear. Each act of suppression instructs the brain to allocate resources to maintain the memory's hidden status. In the longer term, the mental firewall continuously renews its patterns, keeping the ghost file alive. The end result is a gradual erosion of mental sharpness, as seen in studies of chronic stress, where baseline dopamine levels dip by around 30% amidst ongoing cognitive effort. The paradox is clear. The energy you think you free by deleting is, in fact, an illusion of saving. Each suppressed memory has a life of its own, housed in that covert mental trash bin, demanding constant surveillance. The brain's delete button does not erase, it merely pockets the memory, and the effort to keep it quiet arouses additional neural activity. That sustained frame of attention saps a hefty portion, about 40% of the focus and motivation you could have channeled into the present moment. The firewall breach: how suppressed feelings turn into physical pain and sudden burnout. The brain's delete button can cost you more than a stray file. It drains raw metabolic power like a laptop left on non-stop for hours. When a painful memory bubbles out of the mind's quiet archive, the nervous system springs into high gear. The same circuits that once sent a quick warning light into the limbic nest, amygdala, hippocampus, and a few other relays, now continue to fire, even after the trigger has faded. That invisible thrumming is the hidden trash bin opening, and the energy budget of the prefrontal Clark, who is supposed to keep calm, gets flooded. The cost shows up as real wear and tear. A recent neuroimaging study found that blocked emotions can keep the amygdala's electricity firing at a steady rate, and this constant activation consumes glucose at a faster pace. The prefrontal cortex, the part that usually sits on the sidelines and directs the brain's motivation, must work overtime, consuming oxygen and glucose like a busy airport runway during peak traffic. Each unprocessed feeling is a ghost file that keeps loading more content, creating a cascade that leaves the body exhausted. Take the case of a mid-level manager who unspokenly kept a fight unsaid after a supervisor's sharp critique. 3 weeks later, the manager reports relentless tension headaches, numb shoulders, and a sudden creeping sense that every task feels like a treadmill set to burnout. The hidden cycle is simple. the mental firewall cracks, the ghost file storms into the brain's mainframe, and the physical muscles bite back as a scream in the form of pain because the sympathetic chase is never released. Forging a sharp insight, therapists often describe the body as a co-author of the same emotional manuscript. When a writer chooses to delete a chapter instead of editing it, the unsent letters accumulate in the hidden trash bin. Each letter's residue combusts quietly but consistently, demanding that the brain dedicate metabolic fuel to keep an unnecessary scene alive. That fuel, otherwise available for growth, creativity, or endurance, is siphoned away, meaning you spend more energy sleeping lightly, more time recuperating from every stressor, and less power for the joyous friction of daily input. In the end, the moral lesson isn't about labeling feelings as good or bad. It's simply about the runtime cost of keeping unsent secrets in the system. When the brain's delete button is ignored, the cost isn't only your energy, but your body's entire war effort, your resilience to illness, and your capacity to sustain high performance. The reality is that the mental firewall's breach is a silent expense account that drains energy from places where you need it most. Restoring the data. Practical steps to safely look at what your brain tried to hide. Did you know that when the brain activates its mental firewall to push an event into the hidden trash bin, it can burn up to 20% more metabolic energy than a typical thought? The cost is invisible, yet it accumulates every time a memory is buried. Think of the delete button as a tiny, silent vending machine that dispenses tension, pacing, and even subtle aches. Each press of that invisible button comes with a price tag in the form of increased cortisol, heart rate, and a restless mind. The trick is to locate the ghost file safely, without setting the mental firewall into overdrive. A first practical step is to pause and notice the feelings that surface when a specific event creeps into awareness. Write down the sensation in a notebook that feels like a journal more than a therapist's log. When you capture the looming surge of anxiety or the flicker of shame, you create a concrete anchor that the brain can interrogate without blaring the full alarm. Next, let the memory surface in a controlled environment, preferably a quiet room with no distractions. Think of this as a sandbox. You can excavate a single shard of memory without allowing the entire dump to flood the space. Once the ghost file appears, observe it without judgment. Label the emotions as if they were labels on postal envelopes: fear, grief, anger. Naming that emotion releases a small amount of energy stored in the hardened region. The next technique is the mirror question. Ask yourself, what fact do you first need from this memory to move forward? Usually the answer is a single fact that clarifies or ends the loop. This maneuver is like unlocking a locked slot in the delete button. You get one key piece and you don't have to read the entire manual. If the memory feels too intense, diffuse it by drawing a mental line from now to then. Imagine a rope tethering the present to that past event. While holding the rope, exhale slowly, directing energy outward. This exhalation acts much like a thermos siphoning heat away from the trapped emotion. By emigrating a chunk of the hanging energy, your brain reclaims stamina and lowers the metabolic cost of maintaining the hidden trash bin. Finally, integrate the recovered fact into your daily routine. Write a brief sentence linking the fact to a positive action. First, learned that supportive people were present. Place this sentence in a sticky note on your fridge or in your phone's lock screen. Each time the memory tries to reappear, glance at the note, like a quick reset button. The brain then almost immediately banks the lesson, turning what once was a ghost file into a hard source of resilience. Every reclaimed memory is a reclaimed jewel, and over weeks the cumulative savings feel palpable, with fewer nights of restless sleep and fewer midday moments of nice-to-know anger. What if first told you that every time you choose to forget, your brain is secretly paying rent in the form of energy, and it's costing you more than you think? We've just scratched the surface of the brain's hidden trash bin. The delete button you press, your conscious decision to push memories into oblivion, doesn't instantly vanish. Instead, it triggers a mental firewall that keeps those old threads looping in a silent, invisible arena. The ghost files keep humming in the background, and each one demands a splash of neural juice just to stay in check. Think of your mind as a Watlaw house, where slipped memories are a power-hungry ghost. Every whisper you keep locked away is a drain on your energy budget. The key takeaways? First, repression isn't free. It's a costly mental security system. Second, the deeper the ghost files, the more resistance the firewall needs to hold them, and the more energy you burn. Third, freeing those files can lighten your mental load, but only if you're willing to face what's lying in the hidden trash bin. First, know you've probably felt that heaviness before, those nagging memories that stay behind like footprints in a stale hallway. We are in this together. and First M here to help you navigate the terrain of your own mind's vault. If this left you wondering how your brain could juggle the burden of its own secrecy, smash that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive. In future episodes, we'll explore how the brain's memory map rewrites itself when we guide those ghost files into a new, healthier narrative. So stay tuned for more unearthing of the mind's hidden layers.